going on. First off, it's all good. We all just need to stay relaxed and all that other good, happy stuff. So as far as the Brown County EOC is concerned, we're sitting up and sitting pretty good. We're still working on an awful lot of stuff to pre-plan. Our pre-plan, even though it's for Brown County, is incorporating a lot of our border counties as far as stuff is concerned there. So cannot encourage you guys enough to reach out and talk to us about that. So here's what's going on. Yes, we have a couple new infections in Brown County. It's really no truly big issue. And the reason why I say it's no truly big issue is because the hospitals have a handle on it. There's a lot of rumors out there that we're going to turn into a Smithfield. I personally don't see that happening. But with that being said, we all need to practice good stuff. I see Pam's on the line. I'm sure, or I'm hoping she'll talk a little bit more about the facilities. But as far as planning is concerned, we're planning for a 50-bed surge off-site facility. But based on what we're learning is that we're planning for it and hoping to have it if needed. Mental health is a big issue that's going on right now. We had a young person attempt suicide here in Aberdeen. So the mental health is being stepped up, and we do have a mental health person on the panel tonight. It sounds like the Avera system furloughed some people yesterday and today. The intent, I cannot speak to that. I'm not knowing what's going on over there, other than they've furloughed some people. EMTs and paramedics and nurses out there. There's treatments out there, a lot of treatments out there. A lot of people are talking about stuff. Allowable hypoxia. And you're going to start hearing about that an awful lot. The science behind it is new, but it seems to be working. So I don't want to speak too much about that other than keep your eyes and ears open as far as that is concerned. As far as testing on the Department of Health is concerned, hospital people admitted to the hospital are priority. First responders, communal are high priority, and they may be adding, oh, I can't read my writing here, I apologize. I'll figure it out here and then butt in a little bit later. They're also, Department of Health, if you haven't heard, they're putting rapid testing stations in 8 communities. The closest ones to us are Redfield, Mobridge, and Watertown. If they get more testing materials, they may put out more immediate testing or rapid testing throughout the state. Peaks are still expected to be first part of June, mid-June. However, with everything that's going on, it seems like numbers may be getting better or may get worse. It's going to depend an awful lot on our public, our public staying safe. There is talk on all the CDC and the WHO about we should start planning for a second wave. I believe the Department of Health and the systems, all 3 systems, are looking into that. And they're also wanting people to plan for clusters. An example they gave is when schools come back in service, that they may cluster up as far as that's concerned. PPE usage, it's recommended 1 mask per day if not damaged. If it's damaged in any way, shape, or form, get rid of it. I sent out some information about UV lights and things like that. We have to be careful when we use UV lights. We want to use medical grade UV lights to sterilize our N95s if we need to. Heat sterilization autoclave and vaporous hydrogen peroxide works really well too. Also, this week, something I'm kind of, I'm a little scared of this one. We had a local service who surplused an ambulance and they sold it. It was purchased by a private individual who stated that they are buying it so they can do all the COVID-19 transports for that community. Marty Link has been involved and he's investigating this. Just a reminder to all the ambulance guys and our hospital people that are online that it has to be licensed, it has to be equipped, and it has to go through Marty and the Department of Health. So keep your eyes open, or I guess stay aware of that. Numbers, I've been sending the numbers out every morning. Yes, they're increasing exponentially, but again, look at where they're coming from. They're coming from one cluster, and it's the cluster that's changing the numbers. If it wasn't for the cluster, South Dakota would actually be one of the lowest states in the union going right now. So I'm ready for questions if there are any.
Sure, thanks a lot, Keith. Does anybody have any questions for Keith right off the bat? And also, if you have some questions, you can go ahead and put them in the group chat area. I'm going to back up just a few steps here. I'm going to show you just that administrative slide that I've been showing each week, and I just X'd out of it, so I'll have to do it by heart. So first off, again, welcome to this evening's webinar. Really appreciate everybody getting on. Another good number on there, 52 participants online. If you have not signed up on the portal for your hours of continuing education, go ahead and do that. You have till 10:30 tonight. If you need help doing that, text me your name as it appears on your EMT or your EMR card. And you can text that to me at 605-216-6794. And I'll be able to put you in. The next thing on the start off list is I think we're going to be moving these to 7 p.m. on Fridays. I've had a couple of folks say that might be a little bit easier as far as their schedules go. Yeah, so we're going to move to 7 p.m. starting next week. And we're probably going to go for about an hour, 15, hour and a half. It's kind of going to be the plan going forward. So that's kind of where we're sitting there. As far as the webinars go themselves, we will be meeting myself, Dr. Owens if he's available, Michaela, and Sandra Durek, and then whoever else would like to meet or has input on what we want going forward as far as speakers go. So if anybody has any ideas, go ahead and email those to me, and we'll get them on the list. Also, I'm trying to do this from the top of my head here. Oh yeah, I've got how about a different night than Friday? Sorry, but no. Friday's the one that was chosen by pretty much everybody. I think we're going to stay with Friday unless we have a resounding group saying no, not Friday nights. Since there's nothing going on in the world, Fridays seem to work good for most everybody. So I thanks for the comment, but as of right now, we're going to stay on Fridays unless we hear differently. Also, if you are not on the email list that I send out, please put your email in the group chat area so I can get you on the initial email list. I know we have a lot of people on that aren't on that initial email list. So go ahead and put your emails in that group chat, and I'll get those later and get you guys added to the full email list. I think that'll get the word around a little bit better. So if you could go ahead in the group chat area and then send it to everyone, so we're able to get that information later, would be much appreciated. Also, I guess, like Keith alluded to, and we're going to have some speakers on tonight that are going to talk about things that are going on this week. Thanks a lot again, Keith, for the information and the weekly numbers. We have Carrie Kappas from the Eureka Hospital, Eureka Community Health Center, is going to talk to us tonight about kind of what they're doing over there as far as screenings, and they're kind of unique as far as there's a lot of critical access hospitals that have nursing homes that are connected to them. So they are one of those hospitals that have a nursing home connected right onto the hospital. So she's going to give us some information about what they're doing, and then probably talk about maybe a close call that they had here a couple weeks ago, and just kind of give us some information on that. So that would be great. It's going to be great to hear that. We also have Pam Fichtner from Sanford Aberdeen, who is a registered nurse manager in the ER. So she's going to talk to us about what Sanford expects from folks. Also, I think we're going to have Patty Woods talk a little bit more about Serve South Dakota as we get rolling. I know Dr. Owens mentioned it 2 weeks ago. We maybe talked about it a little bit last week, but I think Patty's going to talk a little bit more about that. I was supposed to get an email out, but when I agreed to send that email out to all the participants, my computer bag was in my pickup, which was in the shop. So I just got that back about 6:20. So I did not get that email sent out, but I will send that out after the call is over, and you will get that information that they wanted me to send out to you. So you'll all get that information. I guess I don't have anything else. Patty, did you want to talk about Serve South Dakota? Did you want to talk about that right now? Are you ready?
I'm sorry, was that you? Were you talking to me?
Patty?
Yeah,
Did you want to talk about that Serve South Dakota?
Sure. So anybody that is in the, just a second. Anybody that's in an EMT, or anybody that would like to do some volunteer work at this point, for if we get a alternate site set up and you want to help out, we need to have everyone sign up for Serve South Dakota. So just go to servesouthdakota.com and fill out the information, and then they'll put together a labor pool. So that will help if anybody is wanting to contribute their services when things go south, which we hope they don't. That would be a great way to do that, and then they will keep in contact with you where you would be needed.
All right. Is that just servesd.gov, I believe? Is that what it is?
You're right. Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Servesd.gov is that website. So get on there, get signed up. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Patty will be more than happy to answer anything there. Thanks a lot, Patty.
Kyle?
Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Patty, can I add to what you just talked about?
Absolutely.
Hey, on that email that I asked you to send out, Kyle, it was reference liability concerns and issues and things like that. Under South Dakota codified law, once you get registered in Serve SD and you get called up and put to work, you'll be put to work with an organization, and I'm using Aberdeen Fire as an example. Once we recognize that you're assisting us, then you're automatically covered workman's comp through the state of South Dakota, and liability is through the state of South Dakota, with the exception of driving. And Kyle, that was the email that I sent to you that had the codified laws on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to get that out to everybody. I apologize for not getting that out. So, all right, thanks a lot on that. Appreciate that. I think we'll move right along unless somebody has any questions. I think we will go to Carrie Kappas from Eureka if she's ready to go.
I'm ready.
All right, Carrie, thanks a lot for being on. And yeah, just kind of give us a rundown on what you guys are doing
Okay.
in Western McPherson County.
All right. Well, Carmen Weber is here with me too. So she's our administrator for the hospital and the nursing home. So we've been busy trying to get our things in order to deal with COVID. And I think I finally feel a little bit confident in our procedures when people call with symptoms. We go by the sheets from the CDC that Avera has also provided to us. And if the patient is not in distress, we just have them make an appointment with the lab, and our lab wears their PAPR hoods and meets the person outside to collect the test. We've had just two people that have called for the ambulance. One, we discovered that he had just recently traveled back from the south. He's a snowbird. When the call came in, it was not anything respiratory or anything with a fever. It was just weakness, and he had fallen when he went out to get the newspaper from his mailbox. But somehow, and I'm not really sure, between 911 and the ambulance, somebody asked the travel question. And so that's how they knew that he had traveled. And then they did their, put on all the correct PPE with the face shields and the mask and gowning and gloves, and let us know that, so that we had our PPE on here too in the ER ready for him to be seen. And of course he did get tested. He got discharged back to home, and then in a few days we found out that he was negative. So thank goodness for that. It was kind of a practice run, so to speak. Of course, everybody's all nervous and hoping you're doing it right. The second call that we had did not come through 911 because people have the choice or whatever to just call the hospital directly, because we dispatch the ambulance, which is also kind of a unique thing, I think, for our area. I think a lot of county sheriff offices do the dispatching, which we're just used to doing it that way. And then we know that the ambulance is going out and we have an idea of what's coming in. So this particular patient had been in our hospital earlier in the week for 3 days, and his diagnosis was that he just fell at home. He was dehydrated and whatever. So he was in our hospital for 3 days. His wife decided to take him back home, and he was home for 1 day, and she called in and said that he now had a cough, or increased cough. And so that kind of tipped us off, and our ambulance people also wore their PPE. Only one person went in first of all, and then of course came out for help to get him onto the stretcher and all of that. And then when he got here, we wore the PPE, we did the test, but we're like, okay, I can see how people get very nervous and how quickly people can be exposed, because before the ambulance got to him, they had called a neighbor to come help get him off the floor because he had slipped out of his chair. And then the neighbor was still there when the ambulance people came, and then he saw that the EMTs had their masks and everything on. Well, before the ambulance even got back to town, that person was texting me to make sure if the patient had a fever or whatever, because he had very close contact with him. And then the EMTs were a little bit nervous about it also, which very understandable. And I was very nervous about it because he had been in our hospital for 3 days already, not a suspect of COVID. And now if his test comes back positive, we have a lot of people that just got exposed by one patient. So thank goodness his test came back negative also. But it just, you can see how quickly people could get exposed, and then you're out of workers for at least 7 days. So this morning, we did a Zoom meeting with the West McPherson ambulance service. And just for me to reiterate, I mean, we all know the PPE and we all know how to wear it. And just to reiterate that we need to use it is so very important to keep everybody well, because we need the ambulance people. And I need my nurses and nurses aides to be working here too. So even more important than PPE, or as important, is just the communication between the two entities. And if you have questions, you know, please ask me. We'll find the answer. And just to have very open communication.
All right, thanks a lot. Yeah, that's kind of what we were getting for there is just having that open line of communication, and that's great that you guys did the meeting this morning. If you are an ambulance service and you have a hospital in your community, a smaller community that has a critical access hospital, make sure that you are having that dialogue at least on a weekly basis, if not more, as things are changing. I think it's great to talk through some of the things that maybe the ambulance services aren't on some of the state Department of Health calls, and vice versa. So sharing the information is definitely vital. Anybody have any questions for Carrie at all? All right, thanks a lot. If you do have questions, just go ahead and put them in that chat box as well. We like questions, so go ahead and put them in there. Carrie, did you have anything else, or are you good?
I think I'm good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot to you and Carmen for being on. We really appreciate it. I think next off, we're going to move to Amy Sanderson from Northeast Mental Health to kind of talk to us a little bit about mental health of providers, mental health of providers' families, and then also the mental health of some of the patients that we're going to be running on, who maybe have been cooped up for going on a month here already, and just some things that maybe we need to look for and address if we do get a patient who's maybe experiencing the signs and symptoms of depression. All right, Amy, take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. I'm Amy Sanderson, and I work at Northeastern Mental Health Center here in Aberdeen. And I was glad to hear that you are thinking about mental health through all of this, because I know you have a tremendous responsibility with the medical side of things, and the two really go together. And I think there are multiple layers right now when it comes to the mental health issues that communities are, and I anticipate will be experiencing. So I think it's just important for us to take a minute and take a look at, both how are you managing your own mental health through this whole experience? How are you able to help your family? And then, like he was mentioning, how do we respond to people that you will run into in the community? So first off, I just want to give a big thank you to all of you. I just know that this is a nerve-wracking time for everyone, and especially those of you who are out there anticipating serving people and helping people, and our communities just could not survive without you. And I know it's a scary time right now, but you just have to know how much your communities are appreciative of you and need you now more than ever. So I just think more than ever we have to look at how are you managing the emotional part to this, because that is going to be just as, if not more, taxing than all the rest. So that being said, when I'm asked to talk to a group of people about anxiety and mental health issues through a pandemic, of course, I have no idea how to talk about that in terms of this is a brand new experience for everyone, and we are all going through it together. But what I would say about that is that although there are a lot of things that have changed and are changing, there are also a lot of things that have not changed. And some of the things that we already know about how to manage anxiety and stress and depression through crisis situations, that doesn't change. And we know a lot about that. We also know a lot about, and I know you all know a lot about prepping for emergencies, because that is what your field relies on, that ability to make preparations and to do what we can do to prepare for situations. And just listening for a little bit on this call tonight, I can hear that is the primary response right now, is just how do we plan, how do we prepare. And so the same goes for planning and preparing to take care of your mental and emotional health around the situation. I think that there are, like you said, many things that we know to do. And usually when people are in stress or in crisis situations, one of the hardest parts about it is the fact that there are so many pieces to it that we can't control. So when we talk about anxiety and getting a hold of anxieties and trying to figure out how to manage them in a way that we can move forward, a lot of that has to do with figuring out what pieces of the situation that you can control and what pieces of the situation are not in your control, and making a decision about where you put your focus. So when I was speaking about, we know a lot about mental health crisis and crisis situations and how people cope. I think many of those things, when you're talking about your own mental health, apply here. So I'm going to give you some ideas of things, and these are probably things that you've already heard about or thought about, but I don't think it hurts one bit, especially amid all that's going on, for us to talk about it and think about it. And if you can take some of these things and apply them to your personal life, and you find that they're helpful, then I think it's worth it that we talked about it again. So one of the things that we know about mental health through crisis is that self-care is really important. And I know you've heard people talk about that over and over, but it is critical. So the very things that help you to keep yourself from getting run down outside of a crisis situation are the same things that, when we're in a crisis situation, become really important. And this, this spreads to, not only yourselves, but to your family, because this is a collective crisis, probably different than we've ever experienced, where it's not just our household, and it's not just our family, and it's not just our community even, it's communities, and it's the world around us. So keeping in mind that doing those small pieces of self-care are really, really important. So all the things I'm going to tell you are the things like making sure to remember to eat well, sleep well, which I know becomes difficult for people through crisis, exercise, do something fun, make sure that you're not always consumed with thoughts and ideas around what's happening with the pandemic, making sure that you are watching how much, so information is important. So what's the balance between getting information and then giving your mind a helpful rest from some of that information? So making sure that you're balancing the time that you're spending listening to information about the pandemic and what's going on around the world, and turning some of that off periodically and giving yourself a rest from it. Routines are very important. So much has changed for so many people right now, and kids are home from school, parents are working from home, people are under a lot of stress, people might not know what's coming for them in terms of financial stress in the future. So there's just a lot going on, but even with the fact that there are a lot of changes going on in people's lives, and lives may not look very much like they used to even a month ago, one of the things that our bodies responds to and our mind responds to is you know, I always say anxiety and depression hate a schedule. They don't do well when we are managing our routines well. We thrive with routines. That's just part of our human nature. And so whether it be a new way that you have your routine, it might not look the same, but having a routine becomes really important. So for example, if you're doing some work from home, you know, how can you make that be as usual as it was before, with the difference? So, you know, I talked to different people about how, you know, it just helps if I get up and get ready for the day and still put on, you know, some clothes and just prepare a little bit more for my day. Then, you know, it's easy to avoid some of that or not do it because you're not going anywhere, things like that. Making sure to, you know, have a routine when you're going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning. All of those things become extra important when we're trying to take care of ourselves and our families through a crisis. And then I just think for individuals to remember, and I know there's a lot of information out there, so if you'd want to look into more of it, but you hear a lot about mindfulness, and I know it kind of becomes kind of a buzzword and people might not be familiar with exactly what that is, but a really easy way for me to explain that in a real simple way is to try to stay in the moment that you are in. So for example, there's so many unknowns out there right now. We don't know how this virus is going to affect our communities, our families, our situations. But what we do know is that, you know, worrying about it in ways that aren't helpful not do any good for us to be able to handle those situations going forward. So just remembering to try, when you are feeling that overwhelmed, try to stay in the moment that you are in. So it's easy to kind of think about what we've lost from the past, what's going to happen in the future. But in a moment of stress or anxiety, just recognizing, you know, your situation around you. One simple thing might be, you know, if you're having a lot of anxiety just at home, trying to kind of cope with all those thoughts that you're having, just remembering, you know, to remind yourself, if you're safe in the moment that you're in, I'm in a safe place right now, my family's safe, we're here together, and that it's okay to enjoy your time together. It doesn't take away from the situation going around the world that you're having an okay time with your family. It's okay to be okay with your family. It's okay to be okay when you're home and you're trying to re-energize and reorganize your thoughts around how you're going to manage everything else that's going on in your life. So taking care of your own mental health is actually helping the bigger picture in our communities, and that's okay to do that. As you are preparing, you know, I hear people in the medical community just talking about, you know, all the anxieties around potentially having to interact with somebody who has been exposed to the virus, and I think just remembering that your training is what you rely on. So this situation or any other situation that you're in, you know, that's the piece of the situation that you have control over. So keeping in mind that when you take your precautions, you're going to take them just as if it was any other danger or situation that you would have, and you rely on those precautions because that's what helps prepare and get you ready for doing what you need to do in the stressful situation. I think planning for yourself is really important. So doing whatever you need to do to plan. I was talking earlier about, you know, there's pieces of things that we can control and pieces that we can't. And so keeping in mind that, you know, we can't control what's going on all over the world. We can't control, you know, what our neighbors are doing in response to the threat of a pandemic. We can't control what might happen in Aberdeen next week, but we can control the things that we're doing now. So our individual decisions we can control. And for you going out to help patients, I think the same thing. You can't control, you know, what you're going to run into or what's going to happen, but you can control how you prepare and how you plan for it. You can control the precautions you take and how seriously you take them. And you can control, you know, how much support you get from one another, how much you are relying on the knowledge of each other in the situation. So you can control if you pick up the phone and you talk to another EMT who might also be having some of the thoughts and feelings that you're having. So just keep in mind, you know, if you're having stress about a situation, what pieces of that situation are things that you can control and what pieces are things that you can't control? And how can you put more focus on the things that you can control? And I'm sure that, like was mentioned earlier, that you probably have family members who are also very concerned about you, maybe worried, maybe kids or a spouse that might be concerned about the situation that you're in. And I would say, you know, similar to what we were talking about in self-care for yourself, that self-care becomes really important for your family. So reminding your family that it's okay for, you know, even though people have worries about what might happen or what's going on in the world, that it's okay for us to spend some quality time together. It's okay for us as a family to have a good time together. I think it's also okay for families to spend some time doing some planning together. So what would happen in a situation where mom or dad was exposed? Who would take care of the family? Who would, how would the pieces come together so that, you know, kids will know, okay, somebody will be there to take care of me, and someone will make sure that things at home are okay, and then there'll be a plan for the person if maybe you can't be at home with family for a bit. Where would that person go? How would they take care of themselves? All of those pieces that, you know, it just might help for people to know what the plan is. We do that for everything else. We plan for, you know, where we would go if there was a fire and that we needed to have a family plan for that. You know, this isn't any different. And so the more unknowns that you can eliminate, I think that just helps eliminate more of the anxiety and the pressure that your family might be feeling. And then, you know, for kids, I think just allowing for open communication around it, opening that up, you know, what kids and families and different people are hearing different bits and pieces of information. So depending on who you have in your home, I think also, you know, kind of depends on what kind of conversations you might have together. But I know, you know, I have both teenage kids and then really little kids at my house. And so their responses to all of this situation are really different. So teenagers are getting all kinds of social media ideas about what's going on. And I just think it's so important for adults to be having conversations with kids right now about what their thoughts are and feelings are around what's happening around them. And then what are their fears, and what pieces of those fears can we have a little bit of control over so that we can help kids feel like they have that sense of security that's so needed for all of us, in not only in this situation, but anytime. And then just a little bit on talking about, you know, how do you plan for patients that you might run into who are experiencing issues, and you know, unfortunately, you know, we probably will be seeing more mental health type emergencies going forward. That's just anticipated with all the things that have gone on and are going on in our world around us. So just being extra aware of that when you are interacting on any call that you might go on, paying attention to those cues, asking people about their history, because, you know, I think It's important to know, you know, if somebody has a mental health history, that, you know, things like this only often exacerbate those situations. So knowing those pieces when you go and visit with somebody might become important. I think just for going into places right now, just being extra reassuring yourself. I think, you know, as somebody was mentioning a little bit ago, just kind of the sudden panic that can happen when all of a sudden people see somebody in a mask trying to help somebody. And especially for people who, you may run into people who have maybe a severe mental health issue where maybe you're going to a place where somebody is already, you know, struggling with something like paranoia or another serious mental illness, where you coming in a mask or, you know, PPE might be pretty frightening to them. So just making sure that you're communicating with the patient as to, you know, I'm just, you know, wearing this as a precaution. I'm here to take care of you. I'm here to keep you safe. All those things that I'm sure you are already trained on and you already do. I just think that extra emphasis on them are really important right now. So just your calmness and reassurance, as you know, will filter out to the response of the patient. And especially in the unknowns, I guess my assumption would be that, you know, with this being not only, you know, new to the rest of the world, it's also new to medical professionals. And so your response to that and your level of being able to remain calm, you know, becomes extra important, because anxiety it breeds more anxiety. And so just keeping that in mind, I think, is important as you are interacting with people in the field. And then, you know, I just think remembering that you have all kinds of teams around you, and we now more than ever have to rely on our teams. So no mental health professional can come here and tell you who are out in your specific field, you know, exactly all the things that you might experience and that you might feel as you are doing your job. Probably some of the best people to be able to help you understand and will understand you the best are your own peers. So I always think it's important to remember to reach out to one another. If you are having a thought or a feeling, it is likely that that's a typical response. And I would guess that other people that are experiencing your situation might be having the same fears or the same thoughts. And it's just really good to be able to connect with people who are also feeling the same way. And then also having those conversations about what are you doing? What has helped? What's helped your family? Especially important to take the advice of one another, you know, as we are all learning this new situation and all just trying to put one foot in front of the other. We all have to learn from one another and talk to one another about what you're doing for your family, what you're doing for yourself, and what you're doing for your patients. And then the last piece I just thought would be important to talk about is, you know, how are you staying connected with your mental health providers in your communities? So although there's a lot that's changed in the landscape of how we're able to provide mental health services right now, there's also been a lot that has happened in order to get mental health services safely to people in the ways of using our technology. So, you know, a lot of us are doing a lot of this kind of work using Zoom and telephones and, you know, all the technical equipment that we can to be able to connect with people. And I know that, you know, sometimes that doesn't sound like it would be as nice as, you know, being in the room with somebody, which, you know, I agree with that. And we wish we could be with people. I have been surprised, pleasantly surprised at how people have adapted to connecting using the technology, and that we are still able to provide some really good mental health services through using the technology that keeps everybody safe in the situation. So I just want to encourage everybody to reach out to providers for yourself, for your family, for people that you see in your community that are struggling, that the services are still there. And we have to remember that, they haven't gone away just because they look a little bit different. So, many of you probably have a community mental health center like Northeastern Mental Health in your community. There are lots of other private providers that are offering services in different ways. So just make sure to remember to reach out and find out what is available in your community. And at this point in time, this is not a time just to stop thinking about our mental health. This is a time to focus on our mental health and what we're doing about it. And I just encourage people to remember that piece through all of this. And if you have any questions about how to get in touch with somebody, the state of South Dakota has a good website that has all the information about your community providers, and then local providers too are all out there. So just keep that information close at hand and reach out. So that is, I guess, most of what I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if anybody has any questions or if you'd like to save that for later, but
Amy, it's Kyle here. We did get one that popped in. I think you answered the second part of this one already. But
okay.
the question is, have you seen an increase in call volume for your office? Have you seen an increase since the restrictions all went into place?
Actually, I just got off a phone call just yesterday with some of the other directors around the state with the community mental health providers, and actually it has been surprisingly about the same as usual, if not a little quieter. And I think that what is happening with some of that is that I think people are kind of in a state of, they're just kind of stunned right now in terms of what they're going through and adapting to the life, that they're having to live right now. And I think what history tells us about crisis situations is that the influx of the mental health reach out comes later, but I just want to encourage people to reach out now, because I think, families struggle for quite some time before they actually reach out for help. So if you are out seeing people who have been in homes together for a long time, and I know that the clients that we see, like clients that have already been involved in our services that we are continuing to see, one thing that we have noticed is just, when we call to provide that services in home, there's a lot of people in small spaces right now, and you can imagine the stress that might provide for people. So I just think you guys are an important link for that, to let people know when you're out and you see those situations to reach out and to call.
All right, thanks a lot. And then the second part of that was, what can we do as EMS providers to better educate people on the services available? And I think you kind of answered that one, as far as using the state website, finding who's in the area and just kind of passing that information along. I think that you answered that already. So
yeah, and just having that information, I think, at the ready. So doing a little research, a little prep before you are out in the field, I think is important, because they're different in every little community has something different. But most of the community, well, all of the communities should be covered by one of the 10 community mental health centers. So there should be something for everybody in some way.
all right, and then there was just a couple comments that came in that 211 is also a helpful number.
Yes.
To get info from.
211 is very important, and I should have mentioned that, because that is a great, not only just information and referral source for people needing information of any sort in their community, but they also field any calls for suicide or other emotional distress that people are under, and they're available 24 hours a day. So very, very important resource.
All right, thanks a lot, Amy. If there's any other questions for Amy, you can go ahead and ask them now, or you can continue to ask them on the chat side of things. That seems to work pretty well. If there's nobody that has anything that they want to ask over the airwaves, we will move on to our next speaker. Pam Fiechner from Sanford Aberdeen is going to talk to us about what Sanford has going, and take it away, Pam.
Oh, I turned the video off. I was trying to put my mic on. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, okay, good. Yes, so thank you, Amy. I thought it would be good to let the group know too that with Northeastern Mental Health will come to the emergency department and help us with safety planning on patients who are having a hard time, to help us determine if this is someone who's safe to go home or not. During this COVID season, we really wanted to protect those counselors. They serve a wide Aberdeen area and not risk having them come to the ER and potentially be exposed to somebody who may have COVID. So with lightning speed, we got approval to use the HIPAA compliant Zoom app on the iPads, both in the emergency department, and then the therapists also have them at home. It amazed me how fast that went up the chain and got all the privacy approvals. But by the next day, we were up and running. So now if we do have people who are in crisis in the emergency department, can, with a meeting just like this one, but it's, it's encrypted and safe for HIPAA compliance, but it's been a great way for the therapist to communicate with the patients. So that's one thing that we have that we're doing. We've been working on this probably since, in February, when it really started to seem like it was really getting everybody's attention. For us, we've been working on surge planning. The modeling has changed over time, but we still are keeping everything in place to, no matter what happens in Aberdeen or the greater Brown County area. We internally came up with 3 phases of surge planning. Our first phase 1 would be just if we were at max capacity in the hospital, all of our current units were full. And then the next step was we doubled that. So what if we had twice that number of patients? And then our third phase is what would happen if we had triple the number of patients? What kind of support would we need from the other Sanford sites we work with? If we needed more equipment, more beds, more staff, really looking at what kind of numbers we would need for ventilators and ICU nurses and things like that. So as a lot of facilities we have stopped doing elective surgical cases, trying to conserve PPE. And so we have some staff right now that aren't as busy as they have been in the past. We have not furloughed any staff. We are upskilling our staff. We're taking nurses maybe who've been in a not a bedside clinical role, but they're nurses nonetheless, and we're bringing them back to the bedside. We're doing some training with them. We're taking nurses who have like a med-surg background, and we're adding ICU training to that so that they can help out in the intensive care unit when those numbers increase. Also in the emergency department, we're taking some of our unlicensed staff, but like athletic trainers, and they're gonna come help and be like patient care techs in the emergency department, help be runners, help with being our PPE buddy. So a lot of talk about PPE tonight. I think the thing with PPE, it really goes to the safety of your staff and making your staff feel comfortable, feel safe, that they have the right equipment, that they know how to use it. This isn't new to us, but we always use a buddy when we're donning and doffing PPE. We know from the SIRS and the MERS epidemics that the healthcare workers that contracted those diseases, most often they were contaminating themselves when they were taking off their PPE, when they were doffing. So having a buddy that's watching you and saying, going through a checklist, be very methodical, step by step. and make sure they don't touch something with a contaminated glove or a contaminated hand that could impact them later. So that's, let's see, kind of what we're working on internally. Also, you know, all supplies are kind of hard to get your hands on, so trying to be creative with what you have, what you can make work. There's some really good blogs and information out there coming from the healthcare systems like in New York or Washington that have gone on ahead of us and have experienced a surge of patients. I would really encourage you to seek out some of that. Keith talked a little bit about allowable hypoxia, and I'm curious to hear more on that. That's not a term I'm familiar with. We know there's also these patients that sometimes will present as happy hypoxia, and so they could have a SAT in the 70s, but look completely normal, be mentating normally. If you drew an ABG, their CO would be normal. So what do you do with those people? So high flow nasal cannula is one recommendation, but that equipment can be hard to come by. So some places are using both a nasal cannula at 6 liters and a non-rebreather mask over the top of it. And then you put a surgical mask over all to keep any aerosolization under all of that. But that's pretty close to mimics 100% FiO2. And most of us have nasal cannulas and a non-rebreather available to us pretty easily. So that's one thing you can keep in your back pocket if you're having a hard time getting somebody's SATs up. Let's see. So for testing, Eureka talked some about the patients they've tested. We are also doing some testing. Testing is an aerosolizing procedure. So when we are doing that, we're in our full airborne precaution PPE, which is either an N95 with a face shield or a PAPR. Otherwise, when we have patients under suspicion in the emergency department, we are using contact droplet precautions, which is just a surgical mask, face shield, gown, and gloves. So it's, we're not wearing the N95 or the PAPRs 24/7 in the ER, only if we're doing an aerosolizing procedure like the testing, a nebulizer, or if we would need to intubate someone. Let me see. Looking through my notes here, I had written a few things down. Okay, so other things, a lot of places scaled back on visitors to have one at a time, and most places now you're noticing are doing no visitors at all. We have that with a few exceptions. We are allowing one support person for labor and delivery. We are allowing a parent with pediatrics, and end of life, of course, we will make exceptions for that as well. But otherwise, pretty much all other patients in the emergency department or in the inpatient units do not have any visitors. And that's been a little hard, but we have encouraged families to stay in touch through their own iPads and FaceTime on their phones. We also will call and keep family updated, let them know if somebody's ready to be discharged. For you as EMS providers, that's important to know as well, to not have the family come along for the ride in the ambulance, because they most likely will not be allowed to stay. So, but again, we are working really hard to communicate with the family that's still at home, because we know this is an anxious time for them, concerned about their loved one that's been brought to the hospital. For the last month or so, we have had a lot of decrease in our numbers in the ER, and it kind of makes you wonder, where is everybody? You know, there's still chest pain, you know, there's still gallbladders out there. This past week, some of that picked up a little bit with some of the more routine things coming back to the ER. And, oh, and we also have been doing some curbside testing. Like I mentioned, testing is an aerosolizing procedure. So unless you have a negative airflow room to do that in, it becomes a more complicated procedure as far as cleaning and downtime. So we don't have a formal drive-through at this point, like people can just drive up and get tested. But if they have a MyChart account with Sanford, they can do an e-visit with their provider. The provider can put in the order, and then they drive up to the back of our building, and the clinic team that is doing this service will go out and swab them right in their car. Anybody have any questions? I've done a lot of rambling.
Anybody have any questions for Pam? I guess maybe, I know Keith alluded to it on the side here a little bit, but Pam, could you just maybe explain what a surge means? You know, when we hear surge plans, surges, what does
Sure.
that actually mean?
Sure. So it's going to vary from facility to facility, even like with your disaster plans, right? Like for one ER, if you got, 5 patients all at once, that might be a surge or a disaster. You'd start calling your disaster tree for that number of patients. So as we look at what numbers we can handle on a daily basis, it's really what taxes your system and what would make you call in additional resources, and being ready for that, having a plan in place instead of having to implement your disaster call tree and hope people pick up their phone after 5 o'clock at night or something like that. It's kind of a generic term, but it really is, you're seeing a lot of patients all at once, and it taxes your system.
All right, thank you for that.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions for Pam?
We heard a little while ago for Avera what their procedures are if we have to transfer someone. Is there anything like that at Sanford?
Sure, like bringing someone to us?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, with COVID, we certainly appreciate as early notification as you can provide so that our staff can be in the right PPE when the patient arrives. In order to help facilitate that, we have turned off the badge swipe in our ambulance bay so that we don't get surprised. I think you'll find if you've brought patients to us, we're pretty responsive, and we're usually there at the door to greet you anyways. So that's our plan now, is we'll know you're coming, we'll get in our gear, and when we're ready, we'll open the door to let you in. Otherwise, we're not temp screening or screening questions of EMS personnel. We trust that you all are not working if you're sick, and we don't want to delay getting that patient into an ED bay. So we'll just have you come right on in as soon as you get here.
Okay.
All right, good questions. Anybody else have anything? Keith, if you're still on, I think I'm going to switch back to you. And if you wanted, I know you put it in the chat box, but did you want to talk a little bit more about the permissive hypoxia, please?
Hey, when I'm reading papers and on the sciences from the larger teaching hospitals, they're allowing permissive hypoxia around that 80 to 90%, just using a little bit of supplemental oxygen. They're also following that up with trying to get the patients in a prone position. What that's doing is opening up more of the lung tissue so that the body has a better chance of oxygenating itself. The teaching hospitals are finding that this is delaying putting patients on ventilators, and in some cases, even preventing putting patients on ventilators. That help, Kyle?
Yes, much appreciated. Anybody have any questions on that?
Also, latest science is coming out that in the United States, we're finding, the papers are finding, or the people that do research are finding that a lot of the Americans are taking to heart, don't go to the hospital, don't do anything until you absolutely need to. And some of these patients are coming to the hospitals with irreversible heart damage and brain damage. And a couple of the larger teaching hospitals in the East Coast, or on the East Coast, are also looking at prophylactic thrombolytics, because they are finding that several of these patients are coming in with stroke-like symptoms, and they're hypothesizing that COVID brought it on, but people are delaying seeking attention. And again, the reports that I'm referencing did not come from the CDC or the WHO, so I cannot speak to the validity of these reports, but I am reading these papers just to keep my brain infused with something.
All right, thanks a lot. Do we have any questions from the audience for any of our presenters tonight? All right, I guess not. A couple of other quick things to remember is obviously get your information from the right websites, the CDC website, covid.sd.gov website, and then also the State Department of Health website also has links to both of those websites. So just make sure you're getting that information. And I'm sure that any of our panelists tonight would be very much open to any questions that you guys may have in the future. So if you guys on the panel could maybe share your emails in the chat area as well. And if anybody has any questions, they could maybe reach out to you as well. I think that would be beneficial for sure. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to share with our group? One thing that I did want to put out there is I did send the link out to this to all of the training officers in all of the districts in the state. And I know we've got some people on from down in the southeastern area and then also in District 7 over in the western part of the state. So if you guys have a Facebook page that maybe your district is using or whatever, go ahead and share this. We're still trying to get the word out. We have a few less participants this week than we've had in the last 2 weeks, but we have the ability to go over 100 participants on this Zoom platform that AHEC set up for us. So we definitely have the room. So if anybody wants to share this with other EMS responders, go right ahead and do it. Don't hesitate to do that. I'm not much of a social media person. So if you have avenues to do that, go ahead and put that stuff out there. That'd be much appreciated. So going forward, we will continue these. Again, let me know in the chat box if that's what you guys feel. We don't want to add another meeting if you guys don't feel that it is beneficial, but everything I've been hearing, these have been very beneficial. And again, we thank our local presenters this evening for talking to us and giving us some really, really good information. So with that, if nobody has anything else, Michaela, do you have anything with AHEC?
I think I'm good. I don't know about Sandy.
Sandy, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I would just like if the folks that are participating have any request for information they'd like specifically addressed in these, that they can send that off to you, and we will do our best to find speakers and accommodate those requests. That's it for me.
All right, if there's nothing else, we will go ahead and call it a night. Again, if you are not on the email list that I send out usually on Mondays or Tuesdays, go ahead and put your email over in the chat information or chat area so I can gather that up information and get our email list robust and we get the information out to everybody.
Kyle?
So, yeah, go ahead.
This is Melinda in Groton. I'm
Sure.
one that texted you last week about entering these hours on our for our training.
Sure.
I think I maybe know how to do it now, but what do I enter? What is this? What is tonight's training count towards, and how much?
So that's a really good question. So we've got 2 hours allotted for tonight. And if you go on to the web page, the portal web page, where you can access your account and everything like that, you should be able to find this class. We've always called it COVID-19 something or another, whether it's safety and response or something like that. Go ahead and find that and then click on that link, and that'll take you to the overall page. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's going to be a register button. All you have to do is click that register button. You don't have to do anything else. The hours are already allotted. They go right into your report, right into your bank, and you don't have to put them anywhere. Now, if you're doing something as far as allotting your hours on the national webpage, the NREMT webpage, you can. These are mainly fall under the operations portion, infectious disease, those types of topics. So you can kind of just log them where you feel fit on the national, feel where they fit on the national website. But on the state website, they are already logged and they are already assigned. All you have to do is register for the class, and they fall right into your portal after I click that everybody has successfully completed the course, which usually happens about a half an hour after we're done.
Okay, I'll give it a shot this time.
And if you have a problem, don't hesitate to text me. I did make a how-to guide that I sent out to a couple of people. If you would like that how-to guide, go ahead and send me an email as well. I'll put my email in the chat box again, so everybody has that. I'm doing it right now. So if you need to email me anything, go ahead and use that. Or you can text that 605-216-6794 if you would like to. So with that, if everybody is good and if nobody has any other questions, we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Stay safe. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call one of our officers on the District 4 board. We can help out with anything. I know I did get a question. I should talk about this. I did get a question this week as far as responders. If there is a cluster, like Keith said, that they're maybe looking at the potential for some of those at some point in time. If there is a cluster in a certain community and there is a shortage of EMS providers, how can we get that information out? I would say, I don't know if there's an actual avenue for it yet. There might be. But I would say just picking up the phone or getting a hold of one of our district officers, we can probably run logistics on that for you and get the word out that you're maybe struggling in your community, and we need to maybe give you some options there. So go ahead and just let us know at the district level for right now. I don't know if there's another avenue to do that. But if you're struggling in your area, you need some more EMTs to potentially run calls or be on standby or whatever the case is, don't hesitate to reach out to the district officers, and we can kind of point you in the right direction or help you with that. So with that, I think we're going to call it a night. Again, everybody stay safe. Enjoy the nice weather that's coming as best as you can, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a good night.